restrictions have eased, but you're still getting good numbers for people watching.
Normally on average we have like depends on the producer, 10 to 20, like depends on the producer. But on average, the views, the total views we have 4,000.
That's good.
Yeah, because here in Hong Kong, people can go out to eat. So usually they will watch it afterwards.
I look like I've just swallowed a wasp or something in that photo.
Palatable joke, perhaps. What you just found in your bunch of grapes.
Those vines look a bit unruly there, don't they?
Yeah. So this is online tasting number 2 for me today.
Yeah, Vas Felix before. I gather there's fires down that way today.
Yeah, I saw that. Doesn't look great. So no, I mean, no, for me, we were doing a kind of one earlier in Sydney.
Oh, okay. Yeah, you did one for United. How did that go?
Yeah, it was good, actually. Nice bunch of people. And do you know Alistair Cooper? It's the MW.
That's the MW.
Yeah.
Not really, no.
He was on it, doing a kind of intro, so it was good.
Is he based in Australia?
UK. I think he does some of the buying in Europe.
Okay, so unusual. So what were the wines being shown?
So with us, we had the Advanced Elise on from Eden Valley in the Barossa, and then Steve Panel was showing their Basso Garnacha, and the main bar from United was showing Torbreck's Sterren GSM. So quite a mix. So no, that was good. It's good.
How was the matchups looking?
Oh, well, I didn't actually have a bottle here because we're so skinny on supplies, but I think it was well received. So, yeah, we only scraped together enough for the tasting room. So, I kind of mentioned it was the new wine coming in March.
Right.
So, and they've
Probably
got
good. Your sound's a bit faint, Paddy. I don't know whether it's just me or.
I need to stand closer. I've got a bit of a sore throat. Maybe that. Is that any clearer?
Yeah, that's better. Just a touch of COVID.
Not too COVID-y today. Hopefully.
Yeah, we're meant to be going out for dinner on Saturday with somebody who's one of the co-owners of Pall Mall 67. Okay. And but it's cancelled now because there's COVID in the house. So it's a bit of a bummer, but it's probably saved me from one of the worst hangovers known to man.
I'm sure you make up for that.
I would have been up for it, but this particular woman is an absolute booze beast.
I think, look, I'm sure you'd keep up.
I've seen some of the videos of her post Christmas or post lockdown, and it is mind boggling. Everything's like Magnums and Jeroboams of Dechem and DRC and all this kind of stuff.
That sounds pretty good.
And they bringing along a bottle of Grenache for her.
Well, we'll have Magnum soon, you know.
Not many of them.
Yeah. So I'll come back on that email, so I didn't get it today. Yeah, but so we've got some Magnums lined up for the new vintage, a few of the top wines. So we're going to do some Sons of Time and Charming Man in Magnum.
So Pat, do you do any small half bottle?
No, we don't. We don't. Like, is that big for you guys? The smaller format?
Well, we do have some demand for that, especially for people who are studying wine and also they can't drink too much, but they want to sample a lot of different wines, and it works. But I know that it's not very available in market, so we don't have much choice apart from those model few big guy. So if you have any plan to do half bottle, let me know.
Yeah, okay. It's always
Yeah,
been quite tricky.
at the moment we're going towards bigger bottles rather than smaller ones.
Do you do any drill bomb?
We don't yet. We've just started doing we're just about to start doing magnums for 21 vintage on Sands of Time and Charming Man. We might go to Jeroboam's after that, just putting a toe in the water. But at the moment, on some of the top wines, there's just not enough wine to go around.
Yeah.
So if you start doing the bigger bottles, it's less small bottles for everybody else. So you've got to balance it up a little bit to just try and keep everybody as happy as possible.
Hey, I just noticed that in front of us we have two bottles here. These She's Electric and also Sand of Time. One is screw cap. The other one is the on natural cork. Is it because of the new vintage that you moved to the natural cork?
So Sands of Time has always been in cork.
Yeah.
It's actually a DM cork. And Vagabond and She's Electric have always been in screw cap.
Right, and it's nothing to do with the production, because the She's Electric is smaller production, so because usually some of the producers like in Burgundy, they use natural cork, but in terms of like the seal, when they do wax, it's more like handmade. They don't have the bottling line to do this for them. So
yeah, there is an element of that in it. Obviously, if you're doing really small batches, then to get closures that look like they've been finished properly is much more difficult on those small volumes. It's also a stylistic thing as well. I mean, She's Electric, although it's a single vineyard, the intention was always that was going to be for quite kind of immediate consumption. It's very fresh, it's vibrant, it's got the most whole bunch. Screw cap seemed to suit that wine, whereas I think Sands of Time and Charming Man are more suited to a little bit more bottle age, and so cork seemed more appropriate for that. Sometimes it really just comes down to a kind of a feel about the wine and people that are going to be drinking it. There's nothing too dogmatic about it. A lot of Australians, it has to be screw cap, and it's very black and white. We tend to be a little bit more kind of more grey on it.
Gentlemen, shall we?
Oh, we should start now.
Okay.
You ready, gentlemen?
Yeah, ready to go.
Yeah, let's rock it. Hello everyone，就翻到嚟我哋 Watson Sour 咁啊又見到我阿 Graham 啦，咁今日咧有阿 Ben 哥喺度，咁係我哋嘅澳洲嘅 YY 啊，咁因為上個禮拜，因為今個月咧就係我哋嘅 Grenache 就 Grenache 主題啦，咁我哋上個禮拜又試咗最 classic 南法嘅 Thistledown Pub 啦，咁我哋試咗好多有3支唔同嘅 Grenache blend 啦，咁今個禮拜咧就想試下啲新嘢，咁佢咧我哋請咗一個酒莊咧就嚟自澳洲嘅。點解我哋要咁着重要一定要請一個南澳嘅酒莊嚟講 Grenache 出嚟？咁因為咧Grenache 近呢幾年咧越嚟越興起咧，咁南澳嘅 producer 咧都係一個好強嘅一個新勢力嚟嘅。咁佢哋有最老嘅樹啦，全世界或者就同埋啱啱全世界嘅最 advanced 嘅 winemaking skill 啦、winemaking school 啦、research 啦，咁佢哋做一啲咧比較好terroir driven 嘅酒。咁啊，利用咗好多唔同嘅 material 做啲好出色嘅酒，即係同一個 Grenache 嘅 Renaissance 嘅好重要一個一員。 咁啊，Ben 哥咁啊，點解當初點解獨具慧眼揾到呢一個咁好飲嘅 Thistledown 呢個南澳酒莊？
我咁啱即係撞彩啫。咁喺鏡頭面前有兩位嘅男士啦，咁我就有機會撞到佢哋兩次。
OK，
第一次咧就冇傾得成嘅，後尾再翻返轉頭，我喺另一個場就再撞到佢哋咧，我話喂，可唔可以有機會合作下咧？咁就成咗事啦，係啦。咁我記得第一次去試佢哋酒嘅時候咧，嗰陣時嘅 Grenache 仲未係好 fashionable，即係唔係好多人會留意嘅，淨係而係嗰啲以為係好大啊、大隻啊、酒精高啊咁樣嘅。咁但係我試完佢之後，可能唔係喎，成支偏到咁 elegant 喎。咁所以就決定咗就喂，可唔可以一齊合作下啦？
咁今日我哋就好高興啦，邀請咗Thistledown兩邊嗰邊嘅酒莊其中一個就主要咧就係佢有一首 Master of Wine 啦，同時間佢都係嗰個founder 同埋 owner。係咁另外一邊咧我哋有 Paddy， 咁 Paddy 咧就係佢哋嘅 sales director。
係咁佢哋喺兩個唔同地方嘅，一個係喺澳洲，一個咧就而家喺英國。
所以我哋而家3個時區同時直播嘅。
Okay.
So how are you doing, Jules and Paddy? So we are talking about. I was asking Ben, how did he find you guys for these delicious wines?
That's a bit of luck, right, Paddy? We met twice, and then finally that we make this work and then bring to you to Hong Kong.
Yeah, you're a tough man to persuade. I think you didn't rush in. I think I remember coming to your office in the New Territories, and I distinctly remember it as well. From the first visit, you had a miniature kind of version of Chester from Darrenburg on your back shelf. I was like, you must be a fan of the name. Yeah. And then 1 year later, I think at an expo, you gave me a tap on the shoulder and you said, we need to talk about the wines.
Yes. Yeah.
So it's been great.
So I was saying, so this month we feature a different producer of Grenache around the world. So last week we had a producer from Stratton of the Pub, which is a very classic region for Grenache. And this week, we invite you guys from Macquarie for South Australia, because I think the renaissance of Grenache, the whole trend, you guys play a very important role in terms of this trend, because you guys are the oldest vine in the world of Grenache wine, and you guys also have some of the most advanced technology on winemaking and expertise and winemaker people, and so you guys make very beautiful wines, terroir driven. As Ben mentioned before, tastes really like a Pinot, and so that's why I want you guys to be here. So can you talk us through a little bit, introduce us, what happening of Grenache in South Australia?
Yeah, sure. Evening, everybody, and thanks for inviting us along to talk a little bit about Thistledown and Grenache. I'm going to pick up on something there that Australia is often seen as the new world, and when it comes to a lot of viticulture and terroir, Australia really is the old world. It's got some of the oldest soils in the world, much older than most of Western Europe, which is the established old world. And as you mentioned, Australia, because of the effects of phylloxera in Europe, is often home to the oldest varieties, the oldest Syrah, the oldest Cabernet, are both in Australia. And not traditionally, but Australia has been known as one of those areas that relies quite a lot on technology. We've got very well-trained winemakers. But I think actually what has happened in the Grenache Renaissance is not so much about a reliance on technology, but it's actually going back to understanding the vineyard and linking the winery and the vineyard up in a way that wasn't necessarily always the case in Australia. And I think that there had been a little bit of a divide in that you had winemakers and then you had viticulturists, and they didn't necessarily always kind of work together hand in hand. And I think the way that the industry's changed over the last sort of decade or so has been much more about those two areas working much more together. And that's helped us all understand the potential of Grenache an awful lot better. So just to give a brief kind of resume on Grenache, it was the most widely planted variety in the whole of Australia up until about the 1950s. And that was mainly because the Australians and also export markets for Australian products loved fortified styles of wines, so kind of port sherry styles. And Grenache was the natural variety to make those styles. You can ripen it until it gets up to 17, 18 potential alcohol. So you barely need to fortify it to make fortified styles. So it was really popular as a result of that. It was easy to grow, it was drought tolerant, it didn't need trellising because it's got a big kind of woody structure to it. But then as tastes changed, as people moved towards lighter reds and still white wines, the need for as much Grenache disappeared, and you started to see the decline of Grenache plantings right across Australia. And that culminated in the 1980s with a government-sponsored vine pull. So they removed a lot of Grenache vineyards at that point in time. And because old vine Grenache yields less and it had little value, a lot of the old vines were pulled out in the 1980s. And then between the 1980s and really sort of 2010, there wasn't much value for Grenache. Quite often it was being produced in a very kind of over-ripe, over-oaky style. People didn't enjoy it when they tried it. And because people didn't enjoy it, they didn't drink it. Because they didn't drink it, there was no demand for the fruit. And so it continued to decline to the point where we're still at now, which is about Grenache is 1% of the total vineyard area in Australia, which for all of the press and all the media furore around Grenache over the last sort of few years, you wouldn't believe it was just 1% of the plantings. But over the last 10 years, a small band of winemakers have gone back to basics with it. I think they're looking at the best sites. They're looking at picking a lot earlier than was the received wisdom in the past. We're using wild ferments, we're using more whole bunch to give the wines more structure. And there's less reliance on new oak for flavor. So we're looking at wines which are much brighter, more energetic. I think you mentioned at the beginning, more Pinot-like. And that's really been the foundations of this kind of renaissance for Grenache in Australia. And by doing all of those things, I think people have realized that a lot of McLaren Vale and Barossa are capable of producing world-class Grenache. And that's a movement that we're proud to say we've been one of the sort of drivers for over the last 10 years. We've got a vast array of Grenache, which I sometimes get told off for because there's so many of them. But it's been important to be able to show the diversity of different terroirs to really persuade people that we do have the potential to make world-class wines.
Yeah, can I ask you a question? The whole office know I'm fanatic about Grenache in the past few years, and I'm not shy to go out to tell more people to drink this.
Me neither.
Lovely variety. So I know. Well, Graham mentioned that. Okay, you're one of the very few master wine in the world that 100% that you are very knowledgeable. But I want to ask you something maybe not very scientific or academic. Do you remember what is the moment that really convinced you to fall in love and believe in this variety? Have you tried something from some other producer and then you see a potential that you can make some of the greatest Grenache in the world in McLaren Vale?
I'd love to say I had some kind of amazing moment with a bottle of Chateau Rayas, but it wasn't. It was initially when I kind of got excited about Grenache or Garnacha was actually in Spain. I used to spend an awful lot of time in Spain, and quite often it wasn't the really expensive, profound wines. It was quite often the young wines that I would try immediately after fermentation. Quite often they would have been fermented in big concrete cubes. There weren't anything that was destined for greatness, but they were utterly delicious. And I also spent an awful lot of time in Australia as well, and slowly most of my work has moved to Australia. And when I was tasting Grenache in Australia, I wasn't tasting anything that was that delicious. They were generally overripe. They had too much oak on them. They'd lost all of that kind of potential vibrancy and energy that Garnacha naturally has. And at the time we were looking around at all of those vineyards, we could pretty much walk into any of the top sites and buy fruit because there was so little demand for it. And I think it was the conjunction of those two things. I knew the potential to make incredibly delicious wines, not necessarily world class at that point, but delicious wines. And we were speaking to so many growers that were so kind of depressed about the situation and the fact that they might have to take these vineyards out, that there was no demand, that we knew we could turn this around. We could produce, at the very worst, delicious wines that people would drink, and that would create some demand for the fruit again. And that we'd be able to keep these incredible old vineyards in the ground. At that point in time, I'm not sure we realized that we would be capable of making world-class Grenache, but there was certainly the potential there from the vineyard sites. I think it was really only as recently as 2016 when I think we kind of fully appreciated that the access that we had to fruit was correct, and that the way that we were making the wines was now the way that would translate those amazing vineyards into something that was both delicious and world-class. And that took a little bit of time to work with those vineyards, but it also took a move away from traditional fermentation techniques into something a little bit different, to really kind of focus in on the vibrancy of fruit, and be really kind of faithful to those sites. So that was a rather long answer to quite a simple question.
Well, I think that would be difficult for you to conclude everything of your lifetime work in 3 seconds. I hope we can actually get you here in person so you can explain more to our customer.
Yeah, I would love to. But I think we're all longing to be able to travel and share our love for Grenache again, aren't we?
What about you, Betty? So I'm sure you drink a lot of Grenache. So do you have any like encounter of like the Grenache that wow you?
Well, it's been interesting because I think, well, part of the story for me, the funny thing is one of the very first wines I tried wasn't actually Grenache from Australia. And I started working in the wine trade. It was actually, funnily, a Tempranillo that came from South Australia. It was actually made in the winery where we now make our Thistledown wines. So it was a kind of nice cyclical link, almost kind of 20 years on, to be involved in the project that had kind of been the home to one of the kind of wines that really sort of inspired me. But I think probably along the lines of Giles, where I think it's been probably a bit of a voyage of discovery. And I would say that as a kind of consumer and with an industry perspective. And I think just to kind of go further on Giles's point, I think because Grenache is so strongly associated, firstly with Chateauneuf, and secondly with, kind of high country Spain, northeast Spain, the styles are so different. And I kind of think the style which has really kind of evolved out of Blue Springs and McLaren Vale over the last kind of 10 years, I'm not sure that that's necessarily something we would have been completely aware of at the get-go. I mean, historically, I've always loved kind of Grenache from northeast Spain. Like I love Priorat, they're bigger styles, they're not the same. And more recently, I've been loving kind of a lot of stuff out of Sierra de Gredos as well. Yeah, probably much like yourself. I think you're continually looking for new styles and looking to try new things. I was reading this week, to be honest, that there's even some older vineyard plantings in Washington State and Yakima in the US, which I haven't tasted yet. So I'm kind of interested to have a look there. So yeah, I think it's been a bit of an evolution. But I think what we've seen over the last kind of 7 years is that we've definitely been confident. And I think, if anything, there's been more confidence in our winemaking style. So I think, if anything, Giles' probably winemaking has got more hands off in the last 6 years. We're just a bit more confident about the sites themselves and just letting that kind of base fruit show through. So yeah, again, same as Giles, there's no kind of go-to moment on the varietal, unfortunately. But I just think I kind of had growing confidence that what we were doing and putting out there was the right direction.
But Eddie, I do remember that when I tapped your shoulder on the second time I met, I said, okay, can we talk? Not quite sure, because we already had a partner in Hong Kong. But what are you looking after for? He said, I'm looking for Grenache. Oh, right, okay. They only take Shiraz. Perfect. So that's all I want to have. And then you remember that when you were manning the booth in the Wine Dine Festival, and then I bring a lot of customer to go try this guy. This Grenache is completely different. It's a natural beauty that you never seen before. Oh, really, Grenache? As you said, described before, it could be some quite rustic, that kind of style.
Like high alcohol, full of like jammy fruit.
Yes.
Yeah, kind of like that style.
Yeah, and then everyone out to visit your wine at the booth, and then they come back to, oh right, okay. When will we have it here in Hong Kong? And here we are now. So I'm so glad that we can work on it. But having said that, we all talk about the Grenache story, but these guys make amazing Shiraz as well, and also Chardonnay. So we will book another slot to talk about your other wine later on. But let's just focus on the Grenache tonight.
Shall we start with the first one?
Yes.
So what we got here in the middle, in the Vagabond, 2019.
Yeah, so as I mentioned, we have a vast array of Grenache that we make. But the Vagabond, I think, is the most established of the lot. And I think it'd be fair to say now this is one of the benchmark contemporary Grenaches in Australia. And certainly stands up on a world stage as well. So if you were thinking about the kind of the French model of Premier Grand Cru vineyards, then you would pretty much gravitate towards the Blewett Springs subregion of McLaren Vale. It's not a defined subregion as such, but I think most people that make wine from it do define it as a subregion. What makes it different from the rest of McLaren Vale is that it's a little bit more elevated. It's not high by any stretch of the imagination. It varies from about 180 to about 260 meters. But that's enough for it to, because McLaren Vale's coastal, it's enough for it to catch the cooling sea breezes coming in from the Gulf of St. Vincent, which allows for a more extended growing season. Coupled with that,
springs in on the map on the screen, in middle or in the west or
so where you see the Trot home block, the bottle with Sands of Time, that's where it is. It's in the north of McLaren Vale, sort of northeast.
Okay.
The other defining characteristics of it are that there is a concentration of old dry-grown bush vines in Blewett Springs, and the prevailing soil type is called Maslin sand. And that's really important. That's one of the defining characteristics of Blewett Springs. It's you can see it there. That's beautiful old vine Grenache, and you can see that sort of pale grey sand. That's actually known as something called aeolian sand, which means it's been blown by the wind into the region. And that's happened as a result of the erosion of mountain ranges over millions and millions of years. Twice during McLaren Vale's geological history, it's had a mountain range as high as the Himalayas, which is quite difficult to believe given it's now kind of soft rolling countryside. But that's resulted in massively diverse geology. And in Blewett Springs, it's the best vineyards are on this very deep Maslin sand, sometimes dotted with ironstone. And Grenache loves it for a few different reasons. Grenache is very drought tolerant. It loves free draining soils. Sand is also a deterrent for phylloxera. So a lot of the oldest vines in the world would be grown on sandy soils that phylloxera can't grow in. But also Grenache benefits from indirect sunlight. It doesn't like direct sunlight coming down onto the bunches because the skins are actually quite thin. So if you get too much direct sunlight, the berries get sunburn on them, which is not good. Whereas if it's bush vines grown on sand with sort of an open canopy, the sunlight hits the sand and reflects back up onto the grapes, which is much gentler. And that sand also retains heat during the evening as well. So you get this long, very gentle ripening period. And the wines from Blewett Springs have, I guess, a sort of a pretty quality to them. They're floral, they're aromatic. I think that sand kind of passes on to the wine, this sort of very sort of light, floral, aromatic, textural kind of style. So the Vagabond draws on fruit from 3 or 4 very old vineyards across Blewett Springs. Some of them are very close together. A couple of them, there is literally just a road that runs between the two of them. Some of them are as much as sorry?
How old are they, the vines? How old?
They are all somewhere between 70 and 80 years old. So there's a lot of plantings in Australia in the late 40s and the early 1950s when people came back from Second World War. A lot of new plantings happened around those times. So there are some older ones, but quite a lot of the old vine material was planted around about then.
So
sorry.
it tastes this wine that I just couldn't help myself to keep telling myself is there's a lot of energy there, and you can feel the freshly picked strawberry kind of flavor,
Very juicy.
and also on the palate it has a feather-like texture, which made me very happy. So is it something that to do with the sandy soil to give the lightness that usually found it in some elegant style, let's say for example like
Red wine.
Pinot Noir, that kind of grape. So there's more to do with the soil you just mentioned, isn't it?
I think it's a combination of a lot of different factors, as it always is. Soil certainly helps. I mean, most of the time, our preferred soil structure is sand, although this charming man, another of our single vineyard Grenaches, doesn't come from sand, and I love that wine as well, but it's quite a different character. There's a combination of things here. Vine age is important. It reduces vigor, and so you get more concentration. But for us, old vine characters are not about massive concentration. They're about the fruit achieving the ripeness that we want at an earlier stage. So we're able to pick fruit a little earlier than would have been the case in the past, but with really ripe flavors. But we don't need to let it hang on the vine for months on end so it becomes desiccated and pruny. So what we're looking for is more of those kind of red fruit characters, and always that you mentioned energy. It's all about energy. We have a phrase that we use that we want to pick on the way up rather than the way down.
Right.
And traditionally, I think a lot of winemakers have looked for fruit that was on the way down. So they want to have tasted that it's ripe on the vine, and then they pick it. but by which time it's too ripe. What you need to identify, and just what we do, we spend an awful lot of time in the vineyard prior to picking. And so what I'm looking for is not fruit that is fully ripe, but fruit that is showing the potential to be fully ripe in 2-3 days. And we set the picking time so that it's just approaching ripeness rather than having gone over the top. And I think that's what you see in a lot of our wines, is that you get that energy of fruit that was just getting to the point where it was fully ripe rather than having gone over the top. And then it's our job to not mess that up in the winery, really, and to do everything that we can to retain all of that energy. And it's probably fair to say the first 2 or 3 years we didn't necessarily recognize that. And as we've got better and more confident, and quite often as we've used less oak, we've brought more concrete into the winery. That transition from fruit to wine has been much more linear. We used to find that we lost some of that energy in the winemaking, and now I think we retain it, and in some circumstances I think we enhance it in the winery. But that's what we want. We want these wines to be energetic, pretty, aromatic, but have layer upon layer of fruit flavors, so that you can enjoy it immediately, but you can also sit with it for a few hours and enjoy it and get more out of it.
Yeah, and also just you mentioned that I think we will agree. We find a very fine precision in the wine. All the wine is very precise, as you said. You find perfect timing to pick it and how to retain that energies in the tank and then bottle and now in our glass. We can definitely see that in the wine. So we only start with this the Vagabond. I know you produce a lot of different wine, because Patty sent me email all the time that okay, you have this and this and this, and then hold on, guys. I couldn't keep up with my pace to remember every single thing. So now tonight we are trying to just focus on this 3 wine. So next, which one should we talk about?
So Patty, should we do the She's Electric?
She's electric.
Yeah,
next.
Yeah.
So another thing before we move to the second wine, I noticed that like on your label there's your production size. It's very, very tiny. So I think the Vagabond is one of your wine that you have a bigger production, but which is only 2,000 something for this one.
Yeah,
it's electric. It's like 600 something. So is it because your philosophy is more on the single vineyards wines, so that you can more focus on each wine in a smaller scale?
So certainly on the single vineyards, we're completely governed by what they produce each year. So She's Electric, the vineyard there varies massively from year to year. I mean, in the smallest years, we've got as little as 1 ton of fruit, which is tiny. In a good year, it's still only about 3 tons of fruit. So it is very small. So all of the single vineyards are relatively small in production. Vagabond is slightly larger because we can draw on a larger area. And then we have another wine, Thorny Devil, which is slightly larger production because that comes from the whole of McLaren Vale. I think that some people would have started out just making maybe 1 wine in much bigger volumes, but actually we saw the role that we had to play as we really need to go back to the individual components and ingredients to prove that each of these sites is unique and world-class on its own. You can't do that if you blend them all together. And I think we're at the point now where we've convinced a few folk, and there could be an argument for making something which was kind of larger volume, but we're still talking, I mean, in McLaren Vale, there's 70 hectares of old vine Grenache, that's it. It's a tiny, tiny vineyard area. And when we started out, we could have probably bought fruit from all of that. Now there's quite a long queue to get into it. But some of these wines are really, really small quantities. But we're happy to work that way. And it really does show the diversity of the region in a way that hasn't been done before. And She's Electric is pretty special for us because I think it was one of the first wines that convinced Grenache skeptics around the world. And I can remember taking a bottle of this around kind of Michelin-starred restaurants in London. And traditionally, a lot of those places would never, ever have considered an Australian Grenache for their wine list. And I took it around. It was the first vintage, 2017. And pretty much everyone we went to see bought some and couldn't believe that it was Australian Grenache because it was pale, it was more Pinot-like, it had lots of whole bunch character, it was food friendly,
which is like 13.5 only.
Yeah. So it was a real kind of turning point, I think, for a lot of people. And a lot of people are struck by the name, the label, and the story behind it. I'm not sure whether we've told the story before, but it's a very Australian.
I might jump in and convey it just to keep me motivated. So I'm going to tell the story.
Yeah, okay, you go for it.
Please.
Okay, so She's Electric.
There's a lot of song about Oasis, though.
What was that, sir?
So it's not about the song of Oasis, though.
Yeah, well, a little bit. There's a few cultural references there, and especially in terms, there's definitely some of Giles's musical tastes in the naming of the wines as well. So I think, so look, for me, this is the label actually I love the most, and one of the names that I love the most across the range. So this comes from a single vineyard that was planted in the kind of late 50s, early 60s, dry grown bush vine. And in this bit of the of McLaren Vale, at the top of the ridge, just along the top of the ridge, there's actually an electricity pylon which runs along the top of the vineyards. And you wouldn't actually notice it unless it's kind of really pointed out to you. And in South Australia, they have a bit of a reputation for power outages. So what they reckon happened, unfortunately, there was a fire in the vineyard in 2006. And they think what happened was actually there'd been an outage. One of the birds landed on the wires. The power came back on, fried the bird, and it fell into the vineyard, sitting on fire, and burned down half the site. So the entire half of the vineyard was replanted with new bush vines. But we work with both kind of an older part and a younger part as well. And I just love the idea. So kind of Giles does the creative ones. So when he heard the story, he thought it was too good not to use. So I mean, just to confirm, this wine is suitable for vegans and vegetarians, even though they still don't. And
for the label, my favorite part is the top right corner, the sun, like a quippy smile on the dead bird.
Yeah, well, actually, there's a story behind that as well. The morning that we were the morning that we were picking the fruit for the first time, which was vintage 2017.
Yeah,
there was a cloud formation in the sky identical to what is on the label, and it looked like steps up to heaven. Yeah. Well, there's an alternative name for it, and I just thought, well, I've got to include there's something here that's saying, yeah, this is the right wine at the right time. So we got that detail in on the label as well.
Yeah.
But I guess the name is also meant to be a bit of a reference to the wine style. So this is always a single vineyard wine from that site. The production will vary depending on the year. So some years we get 2 tons, some we go as high as, we've never really been higher than 4 tons off this vineyard. So it's always very small. But it's historically been probably one of the first picked. So I think in 2019, which is actually the year we tasted it, according to my notes, I think this was actually picked as early as 1st of March. So that's the other thing to bear in mind with these three wines here, is they're all 2019, which was actually a very hot year in South Australia. So apparently they had the hottest day that they'd had here since about 2009. One of the days over summer had got as high as 45 degrees. And I think the wine still looked remarkably fresh for that. And this is the vineyard itself. I was out in the vineyard the morning of the harvest last year. So and then the other, just coming back to your question a second ago about the size and the kind of the range that we go down. So it's worth commenting. I think one of the other things that really appeals to us in terms of the variety is we think Grenache is a great grape for showcasing the vineyard that it does come from. So the top end, obviously the Vagabond is Blue Springs region. She's Electric is a single vineyard from the Seaview region in Clarenville. Then we have Sands of Time, which we'll taste as well, which is single vineyard Blewett, which is again another sub-region in the Vale. And then we do Charming Man, which is a sub-region from Clarendon. And the idea is really to almost showcase the best sites or the best cruise, if you will, of McLaren Vale. And I think going forward, this is actually one of the big strengths of the region. It's got an incredibly diverse array of soils and aspects in a remarkably kind of contained area. And for us, it was important, I think, to really highlight these stylistic differences, which I really think you do when you try the wines in a lineup like this side by side. And for us, the comparison, there's a couple of producers who make a comparison with Barolo and Nebbiolo in terms of some of those stylistic differences, and other producers who talk about Burgundy. I would like to think that going forward, that's probably the future of the variety from this region, honing in on some of those regional stylistic differences. Potentially.
Right. So going back to this wine, if I have to ask Graham to describe this one, what do you think?
It's very gentle. So as a Grenache, we didn't expect that this like very silky mouthfeel, and it's very gentle food compared to other Grenache, even to compare to Vagabond. Like Vagabond is more juicy, fruity, forward kind of style of the wine, but Swiss Electric is a little bit more subtle, not as electric as the name suggests, but it's very well integrated, very smooth, very gentle wine.
Yeah, I think they're on the same kind of style that you Thistledown is making. The freshness, the energy, the nerve, they're all there, but it's different expression compared to the Vagabond to this one. This one has a bit more, I would say.
And this one is more subtle.
More subtle, but more, how to say, I lost the word. A bit more deep, and a bit more complex in a way.
Yeah.
You have to talk to her, then she will talk to you.
Yeah.
But you have to invite yourself to her mind to explore what she's trying to tell you.
And also you want to keep drinking it.
Yes.
Because you want to discover more and more flavor in the glass.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's been pretty important for whatever we do. People didn't used to drink Grenache, and because of that, nobody wanted the fruit. It's been really important for us to get people drinking Grenache again, and so some of these wines are very small production and they're not cheap, but we still want people to drink them and enjoy them. And yes, you can sit and you can swirl it around for hours, but ultimately everything needs to be delicious. And the two wines we tried so far are delicious in different ways, and there's different winemaking that happens, and different vineyards involved in it. But it's pretty much been a commitment of ours that every single bottle that we produced, we want to be able to just love and enjoy. And that's whether it's some of our more economic wines or whether it's our very top wines, there is a common thread that runs all the way through of just being delicious and drinkable. And hopefully, as we put across, we make some pretty serious wines, but we don't get too serious about it, because ultimately wine should be a social thing. And one of the things we love about Grenache is that it's incredibly versatile. And a lot of our wines you can have at the beginning of a meal, if straight out the fridge or served cool, and allow them to warm up, and they'll do very different things throughout the meal. And that's what we love about the variety as well. And making all of these different versions of it sort of helps tell that story.
Exactly. So the third one.
You ready to move for the third one?
Yeah.
So this one, Sands of Time, 2019, I think is very important wines to you, both. And should I, Brady, do you want to talk about it? Because you just win the best Grenache of James Halliday this year.
Well, I can give a quick intro and then Jonathan can give the follow up on anything I've missed maybe. But I think this is look, this is probably one of the vineyards I've been working with the longest. Correct me if I'm out on that. But I think we've been working with this site since at least 2014, maybe 2013.
13.
Yeah, and it's one of the oldest vineyards that we work with. So it'd be kind of almost approaching 80 years old. There's a picture of the vineyard in the background there. So this is dry grown bush vine again on sand, although it looks a bit kind of muddier there with that photo. It's kind of in winter. But I think that's quite a good photo for just showing how gnarled and old these bush vines are. And really, I think the fruit that goes into this historically, when we started, it was the core of the Vagabond wine. So, you know, some of the winemaking in 2016 that we experimented on and were really comfortable with, we ended up kind of really taking that on. And then in 2016, we had 2 small concrete eggs brought into the winery for the first time. And we now do a kind of slightly complicated winemaking process where we do a layer of whole bunch and a layer of crush, whole bunch crush all the way up, making almost a kind of layer cake effect in these concrete eggs, and just give really passive extraction. And 2016 was really the first year that we did that with some of this fruit in the Vagabond. And then really kind of going on from that, we really pulled it out. So this is really basically the best of one of the best, most consistent sites that we work with. And I think it's just, hopefully it's got loads of those really pretty lifted aromatic characters that you get from the Vagabond. But for me, it's always a step up in terms of intensity and texture. And I think in 19, I think that really shone through. So it's just recently, it was this 19 wine we're tasting actually, was just voted by Halliday their best Grenache in the country just 2 months ago. So we are done and dusted. So whatever you have in Hong Kong is probably the last of it. So hot property, hopefully. But as ever, small volume and just yeah, consistent.
Like on the
I mean, it's
screen,
interesting. Sorry.
Lee Goodwin, Master of Wine. Compare this to Chateau Hayes.
Well, it's been mentioned a few times, hasn't it? Well, if I was to compare it, I'd say it's a lot better value for money. Sadly, I don't get to drink Chateau Hayes very often. But you mentioned moments when it kind of, the light switched on that actually you're making something which is kind of world class and special. And I think when people are consistently mentioning, and particularly this wine, in relationship to Chateau Hayes, you know that you're onto something. And I think it's recognition for our growers as much as anything, because Sue Trott, who grows this fruit, Bernard Smart, who grows the fruit for Charming Man, they went for long periods of time when this fruit had no value whatsoever, but they continued to farm these incredible vineyards. And I think we're all proud of the fact that not only are the wines getting recognition now, but actually what we set out to do has been achieved. There's Sue Trott on the right-hand side. I'm not really that short. I think that must be some kind of deceptive photograph there.
You're just far away. You're just far away.
Next time I will Photoshop it.
Yeah, no, normally we don't allow photos of me beside Paddy because it makes it short.
Normally it's me.
But yeah, it's recognition for these growers. And I mean, I think the last 3 vintages of Sands of Time have now won major awards, whether it's the Halliday Grenache Challenge, Top Grenache in Australia. The 2020 has just won the Global Fine Wine Trophy. It's now consistently right up there with the very best. And this was a vineyard that was not making anything very special 10 years ago. And it's been great working with these people to recognize the potential we saw in their fruit. And I think not only have we taken that fruit, but we've also helped people look slightly differently at how to actually handle that fruit to get the best out of it. And as Paddy mentioned, we've brought in a few new techniques in the winery, which are generally about doing a little bit less to the fruit, but using a lot more whole bunch, relying on wild ferments for everything, not being afraid to use a little bit of oak, but it's got to be in check. It's got to be the right kind of oak to give that kind of structure.
Yes. How does the whole bunch thing help the wine? So what kind of flavor did it offer to the wine?
For me, it's not so much about flavor, it's about structure.
Okay.
So we have the opposite problem in Australia than sometimes you do in the Northern Hemisphere, where what you're often looking for is to get as much ripeness as you can, depending on the vintage. Whereas in Australia, we're generally trying to restrain the level of ripeness because it's a warm climate and it's getting warmer. So for me, using whole bunch is not so much a question of if, as it would be in the Northern Hemisphere, it's a question of how much. And all of these wines have whole bunch in them, and it varies from 50% in She's Electric to about 33% on Sands of Time. And for me, Grenache can have a tendency to get a bit kind of soft and round in terms of the style of the wines, too big, too unfocused. And you mentioned before that the wines are precise and they're kind of detailed. And that for me is about, it's almost like scaffolding or support around the fruit, and it provides that kind of structure to hold it in place. And so the wines keep in a nice direction. It also, because we are doing extraction or fermentations with no extraction at all, so we don't pump over, we don't hand plunge. If you were to just have a mass of crushed fruit, you wouldn't have any movement in there at all, or any drainage between the different layers of the fermentation. So by doing the layer cake, you have like a sieve, 3 layers of sieve, and it allows warm juice that started fermenting at the bottom to move up and down through the ferment in a way that wouldn't happen otherwise. And because the whole thing rises as it gets a bit warmer, it just gently squeezes the whole thing. So for me, it's about structure of the wine, giving it more focus and more detail, but it's also about how the wine ferments as well. We don't, I think I've mentioned it before in previous tastings, there's a brilliant South African winemaker called Eben Sadie.
Yes.
And he has a phrase where he says that he makes tea, not coffee. And that's an analogy that I love, is that if you take incredible fruit from an amazing site, the last thing you want to do is beat the hell out of it. You want that fruit to just kind of relax and release all of the flavors that it wants to release in the way that you allow tea to do. Whereas coffee, you kind of, you roast the beans, then you grind them up, you extract it really heavily. We don't do that. We want to just allow it to release and percolate and infuse. And because we don't do any of those very sort of strong extractions, having a whole bunch in there as well allows for that fermentation to move around in a way that it couldn't do otherwise. So there's lots of different reasons for it. And I think at the beginning, a lot of people said, oh, you only use whole bunch when you've got really ripe stalks. No, I think we've proved now that certainly in the Southern Hemisphere with Grenache, it works. You just have to read the vintage and work out how much goes in each year.
Well, the more I drink wine, the more I love this product and this industry. And I love to talk to the people like yourself and also Patty, talk about wine. We can talk all day long, no problem. You also know that I'm like a kind of foodie. I like to try different restaurants, and I think winemaker.
What kind of foodie? Real foodie.
Connoisseur. Yeah, winemaker is some, to me is like chef. So all the chef, they can have the same best ingredient if they can spend for it, or they can know how to tell the difference where they can source for. So I like the interpretation, how you use the same material to turn into something amazing. Maybe
They're very different.
Yeah, maybe if I have to go use, if you offer me the same material, I won't be the ingredient. I won't be able to turn this into something like this magical. And also, Giles, you spent a lot of time to do your master degree, master wine degree, and for me, the more I drink, the less I know. So I decided to just follow the chef and follow the winemaker where they go. So they will do the best for me. So I don't have to bother to understand how to make it, how to cook this, how to cook dinner, how to make the wine. But I can have more time to enjoy it because of, I put a lot of your time, the lifetime work and effort in the vineyard, in the kitchen to bring this beauty to us. So
yeah, I mean, I completely share that kind of feeling about food and wine. I love cooking as well, and I kind of treat the two things quite similarly in that I can see various raw ingredients when I'm cooking, and I know what it will taste like at the end. Before I've cooked it, I know exactly what it will taste like. And it sounds a bit strange, but when I taste fruit in the vineyard, I know how that wine will taste at the end of it, and also what I need to do with it and what it will blend with. And that's not necessarily something I think that everybody feels, and it's probably not a traditional kind of Australian approach to things, where things are much more technical. And much more kind of chemical and analytical. A lot more of what we do is about gut instinct, whether it's food or whether it's wine. It's about what we feel about it, which is probably why we've made so many wines, is because I get pulled by my gut more than anything else. So yeah, we get a bit carried away with it, but we all love food. It's incredibly important. And that was one of the key drivers about Thistledown originally, was that there was a sense of frustration that quite often Australian wine was not perceived as being good with food because it was so powerful and so strong. And because we were such foodies and came from a sort of an on-trade background originally, that we wanted to prove that Australian wine, and Grenache in particular, could be really food friendly. So we wanted to make wines which were much more kind of delicate, aromatic, textural, so that you can enjoy them with your favorite foods and they don't overwhelm it. And hopefully we got there.
Yeah. Well, next time we still owe you a meal when you come back to Hong Kong again for the real.
I can't wait. I love Hong Kong, and I'll be there as soon as humanly possible.
My suggestion would be to try and benchmark some Reyes on our next visit.
Yeah, I think we should. We might need to talk to the accountant beforehand.
Yeah, we'll work on that. No problem.
So Ben, which one you like more, electric or sense of time?
I always like the vagabond.
The vagabond.
I'm the kind of person that don't have too much patience, and I want it now, and it gives me everything. I can drink it all by myself, alone, or with food, no problem, or with friends. And for these two the Swiss electric and also the system time, I also like them, but I'm more intriguing to see how they will develop when they put in the bottle the age of maybe a few more years. At the moment, I enjoy the sense of time better because it's more sophisticated.
Yeah.
It's more to my personal taste. What about yourself?
I like Swiss Electric at the moment. Like, so Swiss Electric is the song Swiss Electric. So Sense of Time is more like a day in the life by the Beatles. So it's more like compass, more layers, that you need more time to understand it. And so that's my like a similarity. Like I would say, like, but at the moment I really enjoy the Swiss Electric, the subtlety, the softness, and the drinkability. So like I keep drinking. Swiss Electric, I keep gas by gas.
That's what we want.
Well, look, we have another, because as Giles says, there's always more wines. Much to my protest, much against my protest. We have a new wine coming in the new year, which I think you might like if you're a Beatles fan, called The Fool on the Hill. So I'll keep you posted. Single vineyards. I should be interested.
Looking for
Especially
that.
if you're
They're beautiful wine, single vineyard Eden Valley Grenache from possibly the highest Grenache vineyard in Australia.
Wow.
definitely the highest in South Australia.
Yeah.
So Ben mentioned the aging, the bottle aging. What's your experience of like a bit aging Thistledown wines?
It's a tricky one because obviously we've not been going for generations. First vintage was 2011, which was a terrible vintage to start in because it was one of the wettest vintages in Australian history. And our wines have evolved quite a lot in that period of time, so it's quite difficult to do consistent. But if you start looking really from kind of 2015, 2016 onwards, I think that those wines now are looking excellent. I think what will be interesting to see is 2017, first vintage of Sands of Time, Charming Man, 18. Once we have a couple more years of looking at those, at some point in time, we will do a bit of a vertical on those wines just to see how they age. It's very difficult to say at the moment, and I wouldn't like to guarantee it. The way the wines are made and the quality of the fruit that they come from and the balance of that fruit when it comes in certainly suggests to me that these wines have a lot of potential ahead of them. I think the old style of Australian Grenache that relied on very ripe fruit and lots of oak, you taste those after 10 years, then they're maybe not looking that great. I think the winemaking that was done on them shows through because the fruit has died. Whereas this is very bright, energetic fruit at the outset. I think that will mellow a little bit, but there are no other components that kind of stick out in it. So I think these wines are beautiful when really young, and that's our intention. But I think will be probably at their best in that kind of sort of 5 to 8 year window. But obviously we quite like people to drink them a bit sooner than that as well.
Yeah, I just got a message from a customer. So Eric, obviously he watches live now. He just sent me a message that he bought your wine and also a Thistledown de Pop. So you definitely want to compare side by side to see which one is better.
By the pure red as well.
Yeah. So next week we do a pure red. You mentioned Evan Sadie from South Africa. So he has a project in Spain, Terra Limit, but he now retrieved from that and then go back to South Africa. But next week we're going to with Dominic, the winemaker,
the owner and the winemaker
of Terra Limit, the Grenache from Spain. So it will be interesting. No, I just want to say thank you to you both, and also to the audience who is now watching us. And it's amazing that how this wine. I know if you don't have your wine in your glass now, get a bottle tomorrow, and I'm sure that you will have a great time with your friend and yourself.
We are doing promotion on this.
Yeah. So
I just wanted to say a very quick thank you to you guys as well for asking us on and for your support in the last couple of years. I mean, we're really proud to be represented by you guys in Hong Kong. You do a great job. So thank you.
Very, very much appreciated, and hopefully we'll be able to get over and support you in person before too long.
It won't be long. Otherwise, before that, we'll drink until you come here.
Excellent. Well, thanks very much. Cheers. And thank you to everybody who's been online this evening.
Yeah,
Thank you.
guys. Have a good
Yes.
night.
Cheers.
Cheers.